Welcome to our series on this grade 12 IT or Information Technology Prac exam, paper 1 from November 2024. We are on the third video of the series where we're going to look at the object-oriented programming question. And just like we've mentioned before, I would strongly suggest that you go to the video description where you can see links to the other questions, but particularly to the data files. And then you can go and get the questions, get the data files, practice it, and then come back here and see where you are struggling or where you need to get corrections. So let's get stuck into question 3, and let's we did it again. So here we have got the question 3, which has got details about a World Marathon Association program, and we can deal with records for a particular marathon. So we got details like, for example, over there. And this is the GUI, but the first part of the question is going to revolve around the actual object. So when you open up the file, so for example, I've opened it up over here, don't forget that you need to first write code for the object file or the class file. Remember to come over here and look for the other file. So we're going to probably work on that file first. So here it talks about an incomplete object class M record. It talks about the object having attributes. So they're the attributes, they're the data types, there's the description, and they've got a partially completed constructor and some other methods that have been created for us, including a 2-minute one. Just take note that it's been done for us. We're probably going to have to use these in our object. And we'll start with 3.1.1. An incomplete constructor method receives 5 parameters. Write code to assign these parameters to the fields respectively. So if we go to our program, remember to click on that file. There you can see you must put in your examination number, and there we can clearly see the fields that have been declared for us and the methods that are done for us. So if we go to the constructor, which is the create, there it is. So they've created the declaration. We just need to actually use those values and put them into the fields. So remember, the fields must come first. You are taking that as input basically and putting them into those values. So those are the ones that are changing. So we start with our marathon name, and it's going to be assigned the value from here. Whatever value we put into S marathon name when the constructor is called will then go into the F marathon name. And the same goes for the record holder. F record holder, the way I remember F meaning first do them, then do the parameter value. So we're going to do that for all of them. So all I've done is I've taken the fields first, and they are being assigned the value that's coming in from these parameters. Then 3.1.2, write code for an accessor method called getRecordTime to return the record time. Now that's a key there, that an accessor method, you should know by now, is a function that returns a value. It doesn't take in any values, it simply returns that result. So there's a clue already that it is a function because we see the word return. So we'll come up here to the top. We're going to create a function called getRecordTime, which is going to return the record time, which is a string. So we must make ours a string as well. And then I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-C, and here's the code where we will write our record time, and we're just going to say result because we're returning the record time field. So return the record time. Then 3.1.3, write code for a method called checkRecord that receives a runner's time, so basically a string, and returns a Boolean value. So that's going to be the part that is in brackets as the parameter, and this is what is being returned, which means this method is a function because it returns a value. So let's just declare it first. So we're going to create a function called checkRecord, which takes in a string variable for the runner's time. So let's call it S runner's time of type string, and it returns a Boolean or thin ghost variable. So that's our declaration. Then I press Ctrl-Shift-C. And now what must it do? The method should compare the record time stored in the field with the time that is coming as a parameter. True must be returned if the runner's time received is less than the record time, which means it's a better record time, else false must be returned. Now, in order for us to do this question, we actually need to understand how the times are going to be provided. So I'm going to actually take a little cheat here. It's not an illegal cheat. You can do this. I'm going to come down here and look. So this is how the times are going to be given. Okay, so it's going to be given like that. I'm going to assume that the times are always given in that particular format. So let's think about how we will do this then. It's only 5 marks. So if I've got 2 times, let's say I've got an 02 colon 08 colon 38. So I've got that time, and I receive a new time, 01 colon 45 colon 12. So if I was comparing those two times, they're going to be coming in as strings. So the current record time is a string, and this is also going to be a string. Do I need to do any extraction? Well, if I get the time like that, because times are in the same format, it will consider that part less than that part. And even if it was the same, let's say it was the same and it was 0203, that part would be considered the same as that part, which means it would look at this part to see if it is a match. And it would see that that character there, that 3, is considered a smaller value than the 8. Which means it would consider this time to be less than that time, which is what we want here. It says if it's less, if our receive parameter is less than the record time, then we're going to return a true, else a false if it's not. So we can actually treat these as strings and compare them as strings. So it's going to be as simple as saying if the runner's time that we just receive, which I think is runner's time, if that is less than the record time, it's a smaller time than the record time we've got as a parameter. Now, I've spelled that wrong, so let's just make sure that I use the one that's in the declaration. If I did change that, you would need to make sure that you also change it over here as well. So if the runner's time is a smaller value than the record time, then we are going to return, which means we can say result is equal to true, because this time has broken that record. It is a better time. It's a smaller time than the record. And if it's not, else result equals to false. Remember, with a Boolean function, you must make sure that you return both options. So check for when it's true, check when it's false, so that you're returning both options. And that should be fine for that question. Then we go to 3.1.4. The runner's pace is at the speed at which the runner completes the marathon, measured in minutes per kilometer. We have this formula, which is minutes divided by distance. Write code for a method called calculate pace that uses the 2 minutes method and provide a formula to calculate and return. So it doesn't say anything about taking any values. So we're just going to use the values in the fields, but it does return something, which means this is a function because it's returning the runner's pace as a real value. So it's returning a real value. So let's go to the top. We can say function calc pace, which doesn't take in any parameters, but it does return a real value. Control Shift C. And so we want result to be the minutes divided by the distance, because that's the formula. So where do we get the minutes from? Well, they say we must use the 2 minutes method. So if I scroll down here, there's a 2 minutes method somewhere down here. 2 minutes that takes in the time as a string, and it obviously returns the number of minutes based on that time. Okay, so it's done for me. So I'm just going to come over here and say we're going to use the 2 minutes function, and we're going to use time, which we obviously going to use the time from our time field. So that'll convert it to minutes, and we need to divide it by the distance. And where do we get the distance from? Well, the distance is this field over here. Remember, we don't have to take anything in. There's no parameters that it needs. So therefore, we're probably going to be using the fields in those calculations. And there we go. And then 3.1.5, write a method called toString, which returns a string, which is another function. And it's going to look something like this. Okay, so I'm going to copy that because I can, but you would have to write in that particular format. So let's go over here. We're going to write in another function called toString. Doesn't take in any parameters, but it does return a string. Control Shift C, and we want something that looks like that. So we can build this string. For example, I normally like to create a sline variable of type string and build the string. So I'm going to say sline is going to equal to the marathon time, which is a string, which you can leave it, plus we want this little dash over here. So I want a little bit of a dash, followed by the distance. So we're going to get that from s distance. But just take note, f distance is a real value. So we're going to have to convert that. It doesn't specify anything about decimal places. So we'll just use the normal, convert that from what it is, a float to a string. Then we're going to plus the text km followed by a colon. And if you want to, we can stop there, and then we can just say sline is equal to whatever's currently in sline, which is the stuff we just did there, plus more. What else do we want to add? Then we're going to have the record holder. So f record holder. And then we're going to have the record on the record date in brackets. So we're going to put a bracket, maybe a space bracket, followed by the f record time, which is also a string. So we're happy to leave it like that, plus the text on with a space either side. And then we want the record date. So we're going to say plus f record date, followed by the last little bracket at the end there. So that's the rest of my S line. Took what we did before and add more. And so we must always remember result is equal to this line that we are sending back. I think that is correct. We can't really test any of these. We can just test for syntax to see that they all run. And so they do all run and they do all work, but once we are in the main program and testing it, then we will only see if our methods are correct. We might have to come back here and make changes, but again, don't forget to click on that file to go to the first part of the OOP question. Now we're going to probably move to the first part, which is 3.2, where we are using the object. And we start off with, they've given us 3 buttons. Let's start with 321. So 321's button. There's a whole bunch of values that are coming in. We've already got the marathon name, the holder, the date, and the time. The name, the holder, the date, the time. We don't have the distance because that's from a radio group, but let's see what they want. There we go. The code has been provided to extract the name from the edit boxes. Write code to extract the distance from the radio group. The unit km must not be saved as part of the distance value, and use the information to extract or instantiate an object and then use the toString. Okay, so because we've just got this 2 possible options, we could probably just use an if statement. So I'm going to use, it's the distance that we're trying to work out. That's trying to work out the distance. So I'm going to make a variable for the r distance of type real. And I'm going to just do an if statement. If the radio group dot item index is a 0, then the first option was selected. Then the distance is 21.1. Then my r distance is equal to 21.1. And if it's not the 0, I'm going to assume that there's a possibility that they select nothing. So if it's equal to a 1, then it's the second option, which is 42.2. So it's either one of those 2 options. I think that'll work. It does say extract the information. The unit must not be saved as part of the distance value. I've seen variations where they get the text of the selected one and they use string handling to copy the first 4 characters, for example, to get the number, or to copy up until the position of the space. I think what I've done is suitable because there's only 2 options. So I think we can leave it like that. So now we're going to create our object. Now the key thing is people often make the mistake. We've got an object over there already declared of type M record, which is what this is over here. It's TM record. So I'm going to say, okay, so that's the name of it. So this is where people make a mistake. They go the object's name dot create. Do not do this. You always say the object is equal to what type of object it is. What type of object it is? It's a TM record. So it's equal to a TM record dot create. It's the only time that you say the object is equal to what its type is dot whatever the method is. Every other time you will just say the object dot method. But now we need the marathon name, which we're going to get from there. Then what else do we need? Now I lost that little bit that tells me what it's in there, but then we need the record holder. We can use this to help us. So then we're going to use the record holder as the next argument. Then we need the record date. So then we'll get the record date. Then we need the record time and then the distance. So I'll come here and we'll get the record time. And we know that our distance is already over there. So I'm going to come here, put in the record time, comma, the R distance that we calculated with our case statement. We spell it correctly. So that will create our object. We'll breathe life into it, instantiate the object, and then we must display the details in the rich edit using the toString. So then we're going to say our rich edit dot lines dot add, and we're going to say our object mrecord dot toString. Just call out toString. It's going to return a string, and that string we want to put in the object. So let's just run it and see what it looks like. So if I click on that, there we can see all the details. We can see that it's 42. If I select the other one, it will give the other one as the distance. So I think that is correct. And that one's done. Let's move on to 322. The paste of the record holder needs to be calculated. Write code to call the calc paste method and display the result like that. So that's going to return the paste. So we just want to display that text, and that value is going to come from that method. So that's just a simple display. So we can say the rich edit lines that add, and we want to display this text like that. So let's put this in like that. So that's the text we want to display, except for this part. We're going to stop our string there, and then we're going to add the object's paste holder, which would be obj, the record.calc paste. And then we're going to add this text over here for the rest of it. The only little trick here is obviously there to get an apostrophe. You just put quote, quote to get that part displayed. So that's how we're going to get that part done. But this is also going to return, if you remember correctly, that returns, calc paste returns a real. So we want to display it. Do they say anything about how it must be displayed? They don't say anything, but you can see there that they display to 3 decimal places. So using that as my guide, I'm probably going to say, okay, let's display this as, I'm going to put this on a new line just so we can see it, as a float to string f. Whatever this value is going to be, we're going to say ff fixed, comma 8, comma 3, display to 3 decimal places. and then add the end bit at the end of it. I think that'll be suitable. I think that'll work. So let's run it and see. So we display, let's work out the pace. So that's the same number that we get over here. So that is correct. So be happy with that. And then 323, the details of the current holder must be replaced if another runner completes the race in a shorter time. The user must enter the name and the time it took the new runner to complete the marathon in the edit boxes. So if you look over here, they're going to be the new details over there, which what I like to do, I like to put values in there automatically so I can test it. So if I come over here, they tested with that. So I'm going to just type those values in quickly. So let's just type in the text field Adam Smith as the name, and then the time they used 2:10:15. So 02:10:15, which is not the record, but we'll see how it goes. Double click. And so what we're going to do is we need to determine if the time is a new record. So we first have to check the time. So I think we got the values. No, we don't. We don't even have the values. We need to first do the input. So let's get the value of the name of the person and the new time. They're both going to be of type string. So let's get the input. Get the marks, as we always say. We get the name from EDT. There we go. There we go. There's the name one. Dot text. And we're going to get, spell name correct. And the new time we're going to get from EDT time text. So we've got our two inputs. Now I need to check if this time is the better time. So if it is, so we can say if my object, remember we need to make sure that we use all of the methods. So we have used the create. We have used the 2 minutes inside of this object. We've used pace and we've used the toString. So we probably need to use all these others. So let's probably use the check record because that's a Boolean. So if the object dot check record, and we need to give it this new time. We want to see, is this new time a better record? If it is, if that is equal to true, that means we have a new record. And if it is a new record, if the runners time is less, then we must update the record using these methods. So we're going to set the record of the object. So we're going to say our object dot set record holder, which will be the name of this person. We're going to set the record time, which will be the new time. So that'll be the time, which will be the S new time. And then we will need to set the date. Now, how do we do the date? We want to get the current date, which will be the system date, which will be date, open close bracket. But that needs it, if you remember record date, if I come here, record date needs a string. So I need to convert this date from a date to a string. So I'll use the date to string function so that it can fit. So if it is a new record, we just reset the holder, the time, and the date to the current date, and then we display the data in the rich edit. So then we'll basically do the same thing that we did over here. It's almost the exact same line of code because we've got new details. So I'll do that. And then else, if it's not a new time, if the new time is not better, it's false. If the run's not, then we're just going to display this in the rich edit. So that means the rich edit .lines.add is going to equal to the text that looks like that. And the get current time, that's the one we haven't used. If you come here, we use this, we just haven't used this get record time. So that's obviously where we're going to be using the get record time. So we're going to say plus obj dot get the record time, which is a string, which means it'll fit in perfectly with this text over here. I can put it on a new line just so you can see it. So there we go. Always make sure that you've used all your methods. There was never be a reason why they ask you to create a method that hasn't been used. So we use this in question 3.2.1. We use this inside of our actual object over here somewhere. There it is. So we use 2 minutes. We just use this now. We use the check record now. We used all of those 3 that we used there. Yes, those 2 we used in the previous questions there. We've used them all. Now let's go test everything. Remember, when you are testing, especially if you're testing this question, you can't just test it in isolation. You must go through all of them. So let's test this one. We're going to set the pace. But let's go back and say, okay, now let's check the record. This time is not better than that time. So if we do this, the current time is still that time. But if I make this into, for example, 06, that 2 minutes, 6 minutes is much better than that time. So if I check the record now, it goes, oh, by the way, we have a new person. Adam is now the new record holder at that time on today's date, which is the date that I'm preparing this video. In their example, they will obviously use the date of the exam. So that's why their date is slightly different. There we go. I think that's all done. We've got everything. Make sure you save everything. Make sure that you've included your examination number at the top of both the 3.2 file as well as your object file. So remember to put your examination number there, and let's move on to the next question. For more videos that can help you with your IT practical, make sure you go to our playlist tab on our channel at Mr. Long IT and CAT. Also follow us on TikTok at Mr. Long Education, and don't forget about our theory channel at Mr. Long Computer Terms. And remember, don't do it the long way, do it the Mr. Long way.